Everyone's so used to the traditional IT, just sitting at the service desk, um, working on tickets, desk side by a user, that internal IT kind of work. Now, I myself, I work as an MSP field engineer, and that involves and comes with many different moving parts. So it's very different to the traditional, IT um, work that we see every day, on movies, or that that maybe your friends and family kind of work at. There's constant travel, honestly, in a role like mine, because I am a field engineer, and that means I'll visit client sites every now and then. I am a hybrid field engineer, which means I'll spend part of the time when I'm not on site working out of the service desk with, a large array of clients, and everything from finance to smaller clinics to lawyer firms to PR companies, you name it, right? It's all in there. So it's a big mix of things that I get to take a look at or work with. So that constant travel comes with figuring out how you'll get to certain locations and places. Um, So, there's a lot, especially in the beginning, when I was visiting a lot of the newer clients. Now it's more consistent. I'll be visiting a lot of the same ones. Every now and then there'll be different ones that I might need to backfill, maybe because someone is out, or we're hiring or looking for another engineer because people leave every now and then. You know how it is, right? So I'll get lost, right, for a little bit, but not as much anymore, right? In the beginning, it was a lot of it because I wasn't really fully accustomed to traveling within the city, using the train system and a lot of that. So that is also a part of it. When you are driving to client sites, there's also the issues with parking, especially here in New York City, right? Going to locations like NYC, right? And there's also the commute, right? So sometimes you could be driving for, let's say, what, an hour and a half for certain things, and that takes a toll on you. It's taxing, right? It could be very tiring sitting in a car for hours, or commuting to a certain location that might be way out of the way for you, and that is kind of common, you know, especially coming from the location that I'm at down to the city. Outside of that, it's just, going to unknown places, not knowing the people there. You have to build trust, build those relationships with the point of contacts at those sites, right? And you're always walking into new environments, and you don't really get to fully kind of deeply understand what this environment or what this environment really is like, right? So that makes it a little bit more daunting. It's harder sometimes to ask questions, or when people ask you questions about their network and what's going on. These are things that you have to, over time, figure out, or maybe you have someone that you can ask about this, and maybe they don't know either, right? Yeah, so a lot of it, walking into these unknown places, it's more so also kind of the documentation has to be pretty tight, which in my experience it's really never is. It just gets out of date pretty fast. People forget to update documentation, and things like that. So you're pretty much just walking in blind to these situations. Had a UPS guy just kind of walk by, kind of distract me a little bit there, but yeah, you're walking in blind in a lot of these situations, and you have to be okay with that. And just to build on top of that, building relationships, it makes things a lot easier if you do build relationships. But sometimes they don't make it easy, right? Sometimes they make it pretty hard because these people who are point of contact sometimes have other responsibilities when they are working on site or at their organization, right? So um, it's you know it's a tough one, and you have to learn how, like, pretty much how these people communicate, how they work, and how they want to be communicated to or talked to, right? Or it's just everyone is different, different personalities, and you have to make it work and make sure that they get the information or the details that they need from what occurred during your visit. Another big thing is probably the time management, right? Time management is big. You have to make sure that you document these things. Your time has to be in correctly, since you have to do that daily for every client. There's no forgetting, because it kind of affects you big time, and it's also a billing thing. So you have to make sure that you have everything documented even after you work or visit a client. Just make sure to do that after. So you have to keep track of those things. And things like ticket entries are also really important outside of just the billing and the time sheet issue thing. It's also important for other techs, so they can follow whatever work you did when you were or you resolved an issue, which is really important. If you've ever been in that same situation where you're looking or referencing a ticket, it's just hard to work off of something that is very vague, or it doesn't really have a lot of the steps that you took to resolve something. And you kind of get a feeling when you work on, let's say, a client issue remotely versus something on site. You know that they involve different skill sets, uh, different forms of communication styles, right? So you develop different skill sets, whether you're on site or remote, and having that hybrid situation kind of make things put puts things into a different perspective. And as I mentioned, just having that good ticket hygiene is very important. Other things that are probably worth mentioning would be probably things like just coworker relationships. In my position, like I said, I am hybrid, but I work from home, so I dispatch from home. I work from the service desk from home, so there's no me, kind of working or interacting with my coworkers. This is all on Teams, right? I don't really get to see them. There have been instances where I have kind of filled in for someone who does work at certain client sites. They fulfill positions like staff augmentation technicians, and they pretty much function almost like internal IT for the organizations, but they work for the MSP. And I've kind of filled those positions for a number of months when I first kind of started out, and I did get to connect with some of the techs there, but otherwise it's not something I really get to do, right? Unless I'm working on site and I'm working with someone from L3. And I guess when you take all those things into account, you kind of see that there's a lot of kind of a lot of stress, or it's easy for you to be stressed in a situation or a role like this, and why I see many people don't last as long, and the people that do are a little bit on the older side, who have done many other or have been in many other positions, and they just find it easier to kind of stress manage or manage their stress in a role like this. The work-life balance is something that you have to take into account. You have to be careful, right? Since you're doing a lot of traveling, sometimes you might get stuck in certain places, and you'll get home a lot later than you like in a lot of instances, right? A lot of occasions. Um, so it's hard to keep a stable kind of after work kind of activity, and it can make it harder for you to stay within doing or exploring hobbies and things like that, or maybe studying after work might become a lot harder over time, just because of the work life. If you don't manage it well, or if you don't have certain boundaries, it can really affect your work life. But I think all in all, if you're a new tech, or you know entering the IT field, and this is an offer or an opportunity that it's presented to you, I think it's a great opportunity in the sense that you get to learn so much. There's so much thrown at you. You're thrown into so much that you just kind of have to figure it out, and you have to work with what you have to make things kind of work. And that kind of, yeah, I think it just develops you into a great engineer over time. It lets you kind of evolve into a different kind of tech, working on site versus remotely, and kind of just seeing so many different environments and seeing so many different kinds of issues and meeting so many different kinds of people that it just makes it easier, you going into maybe, let's say, an internal role later on, or into different positions, whatever it may be, let's say security, solutions, cloud. But I think it is something that is worth it. And if you are considering something like that, I would take the opportunity, unless you have like 10 years, right, into IT, and you're already, you know, insecurity or something like that, then it's probably not the best position for you to go for with. Yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of what my experience has been being an MSP engineer, and why I think it's worth it, at least if you are entering the field, or entering, the IT space, or if you, you know, are looking for something different.